Okay, so the first thing and the most important thing about intro to soldering, the first lesson is definitely safety. So the first thing that we're going to do is make sure that we are prepared. You definitely want to put back your hair, get rid of anything that might cause you to injure yourself or catch on fire. So make sure your arms are not having any kind of dangling sleeves or anything. If you don't wear glasses, goggles and a protective mask are pretty important when you're soldering. Okay, so now that we are safe, let's go over our tools. Today we are going to be using the Burnzomatic pencil torch. So this is a small compact torch, so you don't have to have a tank and a much larger torch in your house. So this you can actually get at Home Depot or most hardware stores for between $9 and $20, depending on which size you get. So this torch is charged by one of these little tanks. And what you do to charge it is there's a little hole on the back. Hey guys! And you're going to take this part and you're going to put it right in here, and you're going to hear a little bit of a fizz sound. Okay, so you just do that for a few seconds. It's fully charged. If you get it on you, it's not the biggest deal. It's going to just feel like really cold air. So that is our torch. So next up, we need the tool to light the torch. There's a little setting on this. So you just push this up and you're going to hear the gas going. Okay. And then this is called your striker. We use this to ignite the flame. Might take a try or two. Oh, or one. Okay. So now we have our flame. There's settings between 1 and 4, 1 being the smallest flame, which I'll put it on and you can see it get smaller, and up to 4 for the largest flame. Now I'm going to turn it off by this blue button. Okay, so now when you're soldering, the size of the flame is really going to depend on the size of the item that you're soldering. Smaller flame, smaller piece, larger flame for larger pieces. You want to be careful not to melt your pieces, which is why you would lower the flame. And next, so we've gone over our torch, our striker, and now we're going to go over the other tools necessary for soldering. What I'm soldering on is a soldering block. Normally it comes and it looks pristine and white when it's brand new. These have clearly been used quite a bit. So a soldering block does not absorb the heat. It keeps the heat on the item that you are that you're soldering, and also it just protects the surface area because you don't want to burn your table or your bench or anything. So on this soldering piece, on the soldering block, we're going to put our little charm, which in this case, I'm going to be doing these tiny, very tiny little moon studs, okay? And these are sterling silver. And then what I'm going to attach to them are these, also very tiny to see. Let me put my hand back there so you can see it. It's a little sterling silver earring post. So I prefer to solder with sterling silver or higher. Most people are allergic to anything below that. Some people can't wear sterling, so they can only wear gold or higher or surgical steel. But for this example, we were going to be using sterling silver. The next thing you're going to need is solder. Solder can come in discs, in chips, in wire, in paste form, and it's your preference, whatever you choose. I like to use chips and paste, and I'll go over why I like paste the best in a second. So solder comes in different levels: small, soft, medium, hard, and extra hard. And the different type of solder you use will depend on how strong of a joint you need it to be. So for an earring post, we want it to be really strong. We don't want the posts to break off, and it is the only spot of this earring that is getting soldered. So we're gonna use the highest level that I have, which with me today, I have the hardest, hard solder is the hardest one that I have with me. So solder it's going to melt at a slightly lower temperature than the silver is going to melt. So what's going to happen is when the solder melts, it's going to take the two pieces of silver, the post and the charm, and just fuse them together. So then when the solder cools, which will happen really quickly, the whole piece will be strongly fused together. So now I'm going to move back a second, and I mentioned solder paste. I love solder paste. Solder paste is great because it's already pre-mixed with flux. Flux is this liquid that you put on any part of your piece that is going to be soldered. And this already has it mixed in. It cuts out one step entirely, which is great. So for this case, I'm going to be using the solder paste to show you how to do everything. There's no need in putting a chip and the paste, or putting the paste and the flux. Everything is in here. Okay, so next thing we're gonna go over are our tweezers. Now these, Lauren, you hate using paste. I love it. I don't use it all the time, but especially for something that needs either a medium or a hard, I find it to be really easy. Okay, so our tweezers that we're going to use, as you can see, they have this piece of wood on it. And the reason why we're using these instead of, let's say, tweezers like this, which I'll show you afterwards, which are entirely metal, these are copper, is because the metal is going to get very hot. So you want to make sure you are holding these properly by the wood piece, okay? And these are pressure tweezers, so you have to push them to open them up, okay? So next thing after we solder, I'm going to talk you through this so that when I'm doing it, we can just flow into doing it. The other things that you want to have with you: a cup of water, not for drinking. This is to quench your piece. If you solder something and before you put it to go into your pickle bath, you might want to check your joints, especially if you're new to this. Some people just go directly into putting it into the pickle, which I'll get to in a second. If you're new or you just want to do multiple soldering points, like let's say we're making something that has a prong setting and there's multiple soldering points, you're going to want to quench it in between. You don't have to clean it in between every single soldering point. So do not drink this. It gets chemicals in it. So if you're like me and you pick up anything that's in front of you and drink it, you're going to want to mark up the cup and make sure you're not drinking that. The next thing, and I'm going to turn the camera